So let's say together our denial and affirmation, but first I'd like to remind us that a denial brings up the blockages to the awareness of God, sort of reminds us of them so that we can then sweep them away. And then the affirmation fills us with the positive, with the substance of God. So let's say together the denial. False notions of lack and limitation have no hold on me. And the affirmation, I reach into God's kingdom and draw forth my supply from an inexhaustible storehouse of plenty. Let's say those both one more time. So, false notions of lack and limitation have no hold on me. I reach into God's kingdom and draw forth my supply from an inexhaustible storehouse of plenty. This clicker is giving me problems today. All right. All right, so the title of today's talk is The Parable of the Sower, and the parable of the sower is recounted in the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 13. And after Jesus tells it, his followers ask him, why do you speak in parables? So we'll start with that, and then we'll go back to the parable itself. So why the disciples came, so in Matthew 13:10 it says, the disciples came and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? He answered them, to you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but it is not given to them. So first, to understand the answer that Jesus gives his disciples, we have to understand what is the kingdom of heaven. Charles Fillmore says the kingdom of heaven is a condition of the mind or state of consciousness in which mind, soul, and body are in harmony with divine mind. A state of mind in which peace, love, and harmony fill the thought of the individual or of the group. Jesus knew the truth and gave the only description of heaven which we, immersed in the belief that forms are real, can understand. That is, by comparing it to the various conditions about us with which we are familiar. So again, that's the purpose of parables there, to compare the kingdom of heaven to that about us with which we are familiar. A parable then is described as an analogy or a comparison. Fillmore says it assumes a likeness between higher and lower songs. You can think about, what does song mean to you in that sense? Maybe that's something we could reflect on a bit more. Between higher and lower songs, or spiritual and material, and reveals an analogy. So it's a link between the spiritual and material realms. So in the parable of the sower, Jesus describes a farmer who sows seed. And so I'll start by reading it, and then we'll break down metaphysically what it means a little bit more. So Matthew 13, chapter 3, he says, Matthew writes, then he told them many things by illustrations, saying, look, a sower went out to sow, and as he was sowing, some seeds fell along the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Others fell upon the rocky places where they did not have much soil, and at once they sprang up because of not having depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and because of not having root, they withered. Others too fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them. Still others fell upon the fine soil, and they began to yield fruit. This one 100-fold, that one 60, the other 30. Let them who have ears listen. So, what is he talking about here? He talks about a couple different things, a couple of different symbols. So the first is the seed. What do we mean by seed metaphysically? Fillmore says, the seed is the word of God. The spoken word has a special field of action in the realm of forms. Thought moves on the inner plane, where the vibratory forces have not crystallized into visible things. So seed is the word of truth from God. Seed, if you think about a material seed, what is it? You plant it in the ground and it eventually grows, right? So what does a seed hold within it? It holds a latent power, a potency. We talk about God as omnipotent, all-powerful, right? So a seed has the potency or potential from the same root word for growth, right? So potential, again, means latent power. The farmer, who is represented by the farmer here? Again, Fillmore says, most people think that the word referred to by Jesus is accomplished by preaching or talking with ecclesiastical authority. That means, somebody who's ordained into a priesthood or some kind of religious order. But nothing is said about his official capacity as a sower of good seed. Then, whoever gives forth the true word is an authorized sower. So you don't need any earthly body to ordain you to be a farmer who sows good seed. All you have to do is speak the word of truth. Finally, and this is what we'll spend the most time talking about today, is the soil or the ground that's referred to in the parable. The metaphysical meaning, again, as Fillmore describes it, of the ground is substance in its spiritual wholeness, or the idea of the substance in divine mind. When we realize this idea, we let go of all limitation and are conscious only of the absolute. So the soil then is a metaphor for the human heart, the individual lowercase m mind, and the potential for growth, the potential for connection with the uppercase m mind. So then Jesus goes on to talk about different kinds of ground. So one kind of ground that the seed falls on is the path. And the seed that falls on this ground is eaten by birds because it doesn't penetrate into the ground. This represents individuals who hear the truth but do not understand it. They allow negativity and distractions to steal the potential, again, that latent power of the seed. Fillmore says that although the words we send forth may not all find reception in the minds of those who listen, we are to speak just as if we expect them to. The farmer always plants with the expectation of getting a crop, no matter how often he or she is disappointed. So don't despair if your seed falls on the path. Your duty is to tell truth no matter what. So this path, though, the metaphysical meaning of this path is actually quite profound. There's something in like park planning and urban planning, a concept that they call a desire path or a desire line. And so when they plan parks and things, they plan walkways, and sometimes they're paved, sometimes there's rock. But oftentimes people will walk off of the pathways and walk into the grass. What happens when a lot of people walk along this same path? The grass gets packed down, right? The grass cannot grow because there's no room for it. It's compacted. The beaten path represents paths that we've beaten for ourselves, that prevent us from taking, as Robert Frost says, the road less traveled. So, to realize your fertile potential, you have to realize that you already have what you desire. Other seed, though, falls on rocky ground. This seed sprouts quickly, but it lacks deep roots and withers under the sun. This symbolizes those who initially receive the word with joy, with enthusiasm even, but abandon it when challenges arise because it has not taken root. And to elucidate this a little bit more, I want to bring in, now I've talked about this book before, Magnificent Decision by James A. Decker. This is the book that led me to Unity. Somebody had donated it, and I found it in the thrift store, and I had never heard of Unity before. And I looked it up and said, hey, that sounds like something I want to join. So, thank you. Magnificent decision, yes. So Decker says in this book, Decker was a Unity teacher. I think this was published in 63, so back in the 60s. Our mistaken attitude shows up clearly in the light of the many scriptural passages that mention patience. Jesus Christ, telling the parable of the sower and seed, spoke of those who, having heard the word, hold it fast and bring forth fruit with patience. So invariably, when patience is mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned in connection with action, with progress, and with results. Paul, writing the Thessalonians, spoke of patience of faith. Like I said, so Fillmore interprets this part on the rocky soil as one whose mind is unretentive, like a sieve. What happens to a sieve when you put sand or something in it? It falls right out, right? May receive the word with interest and attention, but through lack of power to concentrate on one subject and keep the thought centered on it, they allow the spoken word to slip out of mind and be lost. So this should lead us to think about what distractions in life inhibit your spiritual growth. This is something you can reflect on and take home with you. There's also thorny ground, the seeds which grow but are choked by thorns, representing the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches that stifle spiritual growth. We talked about this when I talked about the law of opulence. Talked about this as the metaphysical term mammon. Again, mammon is the outward riches. The cares, riches, and pleasures of this life all serve to choke the word and prevent it to coming to full fruition. So again, a question to reflect on might be, is a competitive spirit limiting your potential with false beliefs of limited supply? Are you making only a partial application of new thought? Then the final kind of soil that Jesus talks about is the good soil. These seeds grow and produce a bountiful harvest. This symbolizes individuals who hear, understand, and nurture the good word, allowing it to flourish. Again, as Charles Fillmore says, the receptive and retentive type of mind, the fruits or the crops obtained from these seeds, are conditioned by the character of the soil or the type of mind in which the seeds are thought find lodgment. So how do we cultivate this fertile kind of soil, this last kind? Again, this parable emphasizes that the condition of your inner thoughts and consciousness, your soil, determines the fruitfulness of the seed, the truth or divine inspiration. It highlights the importance of cultivating a receptive and focused mind to manifest positive outcomes. But we may have soil that is rocky and thorny. And it's, no blame if you do. I mean, I have my own rocks and thorns in my consciousness as well. We all do. In fact, often our subconscious mind, which represents our soil, or which the soil represents, is keeping us exactly where we are on purpose. Dr. Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and he noticed that after he gave his patients surgery, many of his patients still saw themselves as unattractive. He concluded that their self-image hadn't changed, so their perception of reality didn't change. This led to a big breakthrough in psychology, the idea that your self-image is like a thermostat. So what does a thermostat do? I have a thermostat on the wall over here. Set it at, I like to set it at 72 degrees. And what does it do? It regulates the temperature. So if it gets above 72 degrees, the air conditioning comes on and brings it down. If it gets below 72 degrees, the heat comes on and brings it up. But your self-image then is like a thermostat that always pulls you back to what feels normal. Your subconscious is trying to make things familiar, keep things familiar. So, if wealth feels unfamiliar to you, you'll sabotage it. If success is uncomfortable to you, you'll procrastinate and put it off. If deep, profound love of another person feels unsafe to you, you'll push them away. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you believe you are. So this is why people struggle sometimes. They get in that path. They're sowing seed, but it falls on the compacted soil. There's no room for growth there because it's so filled with these limiting beliefs that they can't add anything new. Sometimes deep down, people may identify as broke, unlucky, undeserving, and their subconscious will reject the new results. So, how do you cultivate this good soil that Jesus talked about? Well, it involves interrupting your old identity patterns, starting to see yourself in a new way. See yourself as a being of God. Act as if, don't desire, act as if it's already been granted to you. Act as if you are deserving. Immerse yourself in new environments. Sometimes a change in the external circumstances can create a change inside, but not always. But that may be a thing that you might try. But overall, make success feel normal to your mind. So, I'd like to give you another parable. These different kinds of soil, soil is also spoken of as earth in our language. And what is earth? The world, right? So we could kind of think of these different soils as different worlds, different states of consciousness as multiple universes. So Deckard points to a contemporary science fiction story, it was published in the 50s, as a parable of metaphysical principles. He said, I was reading a friend said to him, I was reading a science fiction magazine the other day, and in one of the stories I found an expression of the truth idea that is as effective as anything I've ever read in metaphysical literature. The story is called What Rough Beast from 1959, by the author Mike Kronsky. Mike Kronsky is the main character. It's about, so this character, he heals wounds, he brings unexpected windfalls of money to needy persons, and otherwise works miracles. But it was an explanation of how he was able to do these things that impressed Decker's friend. And so I'll read from the story here. Always I could see where beside this world is many other worlds, and so many you could not count. To me, it is a hard thing to understand that people only see what is here. But then I also learned to reach, not with hands, but with mind. And where this world touches the other world, I learned to turn up that little piece of it, and it would be different. At first, I did this without knowing, when I was very sick and frightened that I would die. Without knowing it, I reached and turned, and suddenly I was not sick. So, this man's associates did not understand when he told them this, so he explains further. Look, from the time God made the world, if a thing was possible, it might happen, right? Because otherwise, it would not be God. If a thing is possible somewhere, it happens. It must happen. Otherwise, God is not God. This is the magazine that the story was originally published in. But he's talking about something that is something that scientists, theoretical physicists talk about, actually. It's quite popular for theoretical physicists to talk about. And it's multiverse theory. Multiverse theory, I'll just give you a quick summary of it, is the idea that there are multiple universes that encompass all the possible realities. And some versions of multiverse theory even posit that every time you make a decision, there's a diversion of worlds. So this aligns quite well with, for one thing, what the Bible says, what Jesus said when he told his disciples, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, for I go to prepare a place for you." Likewise, Charles Fillmore says, "We have access to the divine realm from which all thoughts are projected into the world. We're constantly taking ideas from the spiritual world and forming them into our own conception of the things we desire." So, even if our seed falls on the path or the rocks or the thorns, we have infinite amounts of seed. We can always take from that infinite storehouse. And we can always speak truth, whether it falls on productive, fertile soil or not. So Decker concludes when he talks about this story, like the little man in the story my friend related, you have the power within you to reach within this perfect kingdom and draw forth whatever good thing you need. If you desire healing for yourself, for another, reach into God's kingdom for perfect health and wholeness of body and mind. If you need greater abundance, reach into God's kingdom and draw forth your supply from an inexhaustible storehouse of plenty. If your concern is for universal peace, reach into God's kingdom for the key to individual, community, and world harmony. It means beginning to see yourself not as what you are, but as what you can be, as the seed, as that latent potential. And to produce the fertile soil within us, we need to realize that we are the presence of God expressing as us. You need to discover the me that other people don't know, and even you don't know very well. The inexorable self, the infinite self. You need to release the allness of mind. And remember that idea of the desire path, right? Desire is a lack of recognition that you already have everything you desire. So to release the allness of mind means to realize that it is already granted to you, and to act as if it is already granted to you. And with that, this is the kingdom of heaven, by the way. Sometimes it's good too to create a mental picture, and by creating a picture in your mind, you actually create that thing. So, okay.